Hang on, I'll start that one again. The BBC said viewing across its TV channels and iPlayer is more than Netflix, Prime Video and Disney Plus combined, and ahead of YouTube and TikTok combined. Hi, it's me again, and I thought we could talk a bit about the BBC today, because we do that sometimes. There's the least surprising headline I've seen in a long time. I thought we could talk about it. Look, BBC says, unprecedented funding challenge lies ahead as content spend set to fall by $200 million in dollars for some reason that I don't understand. This must be an American publication. Unprecedented funding challenge. Could that be because of the way you choose to fund your media organisation? The BBC? I don't know. I know Netflix went through a little bit of a funding challenge where it lost a load of subscribers, but they're still going and they're still spending millions making content. This BBC spend could fall by 200 million. That's barely a movie to Netflix, isn't it? If the BBC were a global streaming giant, wouldn't be having any of these problems, would we? Without intervention, it will be difficult to maintain the current ambition and volume of UK content, said their plan. The much publicised drop-off in the American co-production market has left numerous BBC shows stuck in limbo, although today's annual plan didn't go into further details around these shows, blah, blah, blah. The BBC thought it was a good idea to start teaming up with American giants who have very deep pockets, like Disney. Disney's now co-production partner for Doctor Who. You know, that show that's falling on its arse the last few years. The BBC spent fortunes with the BBC on it. The BBC also worked very closely with Netflix on many projects and a few American networks as well. Goes to show how much shit they've got on the shelf. Back in the day, it weren't even that long ago, 20 years or so ago, we were creating the best content there was and selling the concepts into America. Now, they've got nothing. There's no creativity in the BBC at all. We're all having to buy everything in, and using American money includes somewhat of a message into the productions, and then you end up with the new Doctor Who. The BBC did, however, reveal that its content spend for the coming 12 months will slide by £150 million to £2.5 billion. That's not the BBC necessarily that you pay your licence fee to, because that brings in 5-ish billion a year. But think of the buildings they've got. Think of all the staff. Think of all the equipment, the cars, the booze bills, the hotel bills for the boss. The 2.5 billion, a lot of that is coming from BBC Studios, which is a commercial entity that gets paid to make shows, or they make their own shows and they sell them all around the world for profit using the BBC name. How's that all right? If they can make a profit using the BBC name, you don't need our money, do you? Having forecast a surplus for this year after an enormous £492 million deficit last year as part of a transformational budget, the BBC in fact posted another deficit, although a far lower £33 million due to some delayed transformation costs. Can't read the word transformation today for some reason. So they forecasted a surplus, the BBC. Whether this is studios or the other bit of the BBC, we haven't got that far yet. They probably won't tell us. But let's say, for the sake of argument, it's the BBC that you pay your licence fee to. They were finally going to forecast a surplus. But how's that going to work? Because the licence fee's just gone up. It's just gone up to £174.50. If they were left over with money at the end of the year from their budget, why do you need more money from us? Why did it need to go up a fiver if you've got surplus left over at the end of the year? So they can't possibly ever allow a surplus to happen, because then they couldn't say, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money. Could they? There will never be a surplus. They could, quite easily. Think of all the waste, the amount of buildings they have around the country, the amount of staff they have around the world. They could easily cut the cloth and have a surplus in their budget. But if they do, they can't put the licence fee up, can they? The BBC's group income will be just over 6 billion, and licence fee income is set to rise by around 100 million to 3.9 billion. Yeah, there's a lot of messy numbers in the licence fees. Some places report it as 3 billion, some places report it as 4 billion. I've seen it as high as 5 billion, which I believe the boss Tim Davies said it was around 5 billion in an interview last year. As it's now gone up a fiver, I think we can assume it's about 5 billion plus. It's helped by an annual increase of the fee, but partly offset by a 1% decline in the number of licence fee payers. Only 1%. I don't know if that's true. The BBC unsurprisingly raised concerns about future funding challenges, but used the plan to passionately argue that it is the premier maker of British content. The premier maker of British content. Maybe once, maybe when things were in black and white, but they get the odd hit show. Credit where credit's due, they do. But most of the shows that people talk about nowadays, the big stuff, the Saturday night stuff, it's not coming out of the BBC, is it? It's coming out of ITV. It's coming out of ITV. And ITV get none of your licence fee money. They stand on their own 2 feet by showing adverts. But the BBC is the premier. They're the best, apparently. It cited research that found 16% of adults would agree that Netflix shows the lives of people in the UK, compared with 64% of the people. Well, that's a complete nonsense statistic. Netflix is a world company. They make shows all around the world. Use a VPN and go into a Spanish-speaking country or something. There's shows that you won't see on British Netflix. But the BBC, 64% of UK adults agree that the BBC shows lives. It should be 100%, shouldn't it? As viewing shifts to international platforms, consumption of British content is at risk, said the BBC plan. The BBC invests more in original British creativity than anyone else, keeping the UK's creative economy strong and supporting new talent across the sector. So why isn't your stuff better? Are you investing all this money in good productions? Tricky. BBC Studios, who you know I've got a massive problem with, how you're allowed to trade under the BBC name but be a commercial company is beyond me. But anyway, they have been going around buying up small independent television production companies and letting them keep their name. They're not changing them into part of BBC Studios. So you would never know. Is that where the money's going? Into your own coffers? Because it just goes round and round and round then. Isn't it? Probably. Why else would you buy the production companies? The BBC said viewing across its TV channels and iPlayer is more than Netflix. Prime... Hang on, I'll start that one again. The BBC said viewing across its TV channels and iPlayer is more than Netflix, Prime Video and Disney Plus combined, and ahead of YouTube and TikTok combined. That is not possible. The BBC's viewing across its TV channels and iPlayer is more than YouTube and TikTok combined. You mean the two biggest content outlets on the planet? Your iPlayer gets more viewing than that. The Netflix, Prime Video and Disney Plus combine. Who wrote this? I want to see the evidence that you found to be able to write that. Who wrote this? Where is it? Who wrote this? Max Goldbart from Deadline. I'm calling bullshit on that. Oh, it said the BBC said across. Oh, I'm going to have to look into that. I feel an FOI request coming on to find out where they got that data from. The document revealed plans to move more creative spend, programming and journalism outside of London to better represent and reflect audiences. Doesn't matter, does it? BBC Commercial, meanwhile, which incorporates BBC Studios and shouldn't be allowed to be called the BBC if you can make your own money, will continue to invest in infrastructure, services and content, which they will then sell to the BBC for your licence fees. it winds me up. It just winds me up. I can't be bothered to read any more of that. It's annoyed me somewhat. How can they possibly... I can't wait to do some research into this and then probably file an FOI request to see how they come up with the BBC's viewing across its TV channels and iPlayer is more than YouTube and TikTok combined. Maybe YouTube and TikTok's BBC channels combined. But it doesn't say that, does it? Stop it with the license fee. Get some proper direction. Get some proper management who know what they're doing and have a direction for the corporation. Stop taxing the British people to fund your terrible organisation. Stand on your own 2 feet. Show ads. Ads will incentivise you to do better, like ITV. If ITV didn't make any shows people wanted to watch, they wouldn't get any advertising revenue and they'd go bust. BBC don't have that problem. There's no incentive for them to do better. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching. Way down to leaving your comment. Hit all the buttons and everything as well. If you do that, hopefully I'll get to see you in another video again soon, won't I? Ta-da.